There are some moments in life we forget, but others don't. A man might speak a sentence and walk away unchanged, but that sentence may stay in someone else's heart for the rest of their life. That night, you said something. Maybe you thought. It was a passing comment. Maybe you said it in anger. Maybe you didn't mean it the way it came out. But she heard it, and she never forgot. There's a reason you're listening to this right now. Deep inside, something is stirring. A memory you've buried. A moment you've never truly dealt with. And maybe you've even convinced yourself it wasn't that serious. But what if it was? What if those words became the turning point in her life, the moment where her trust cracked, her love wavered, or her heart broke? The truth is, women don't forget what men say in the heat of passion, in the darkness of night, or in the silence of arguments. Because for her, every word from you meant something. Your voice was once her safety. Your words were her assurance. But that night, you said something that didn't feel like love. It felt like betrayal, like rejection, like abandonment. And though the room went quiet, her soul did not. She may have smiled afterward. She may have said, "It's okay." She may have even stayed. But something in her spirit was wounded. And some wounds don't bleed. They bury themselves under layers of silence, distance, and confusion. You thought everything moved on. But something inside her stayed behind, stuck on that moment. Because she never forgot what you said that night. Maybe you're asking, why bring this up now? What can I even do about it? The answer is simple. Everything. You see, healing doesn't begin when time passes. It begins when truth is spoken. You may not be able to undo the past, but you can choose what kind of man you want to be after the past. A man who justifies his actions, or a man who seeks redemption. A lot of men carry regret, but few carry responsibility. I'm not here to make you feel guilty. I'm here to make you aware. Because if she mattered to you, if her tears, her trust, her love mattered, then what you do next matters even more. You may never get the chance to speak to her again, or maybe you still can. But even if she never hears your voice, God hears your heart. And healing begins with confession, if not to her, then to your Creator. There's a weight in your words. You have the power to destroy with them, but you also have the power to build, restore, uplift, and honor. If your words once tore down, let your new words lift up. If your silence once hurt, let your voice now bring healing. Because even if she never forgot what you said that night, maybe, just maybe, she'll never forget what you say next. Don't waste this moment. Don't harden your heart. Don't say, it's too late. Because the truth is, as long as you're breathing, it's not too late to become the man who speaks life instead of pain. The man whose words carry healing instead of harm. The man who doesn't run from the truth, but walks boldly into it. She never forgot what you said that night. And now, you will never forget what it meant. There is a sacred space within a woman's heart, where words live far longer than most men realize. While a man may speak with passing emotion, a woman often listens with deep sensitivity. She doesn't just hear the words. She absorbs them. They don't simply enter her ears, they enter her soul. And it's in that quiet, sacred space that your words can either take root and bloom or wound and scar. The weight of a man's voice carries a different kind of gravity in the life of a woman who trusts him, loves him, and lets him in. She listens closely not because she's weak or needy, but because she cares deeply. She builds her understanding of the relationship based on what he says and how he says it. When he encourages her, it lifts her. When he speaks with honor, she feels safe. But when his words cut, blame, belittle, or withdraw, they hit harder than he'll ever know. Words once spoken can't be retrieved. And in the world of emotions, there is no rewind button. A sharp tone, a careless phrase, a hurtful accusation, a disrespectful remark, all of it carries weight, especially when it comes from someone she's emotionally invested in. Even when she tries to act strong, tries to move forward, tries to let it go, those words follow her into the quiet spaces of her day. They revisit her in the middle of the night. They echo when she's alone. You may not remember what you said. You may have moved on from that moment, but she hasn't, because to her, that moment wasn't just another argument or misunderstanding. It was a shift in her heart. It became a memory attached to pain. And pain, when unaddressed, begins to define perception. It colors the way she sees herself, and sometimes even how she sees her worth. Your words had the power to create something beautiful, but in that moment, they may have created something broken. This is not to place blame, it is to awaken responsibility. Because you need to know just how powerful your voice is. You need to understand that the way you speak to a woman shapes her reality. She is not made of glass, but she's also not made of stone. She's resilient, but not invincible. A man's words are either a shelter or a storm. And when she gave you her trust, she gave you the keys to one of the most delicate places in her life, her heart. That is not a small thing. That is sacred ground. And the way you speak within it has the potential to either plant peace or produce pain. What you say, how you say it, and even what you choose not to say, these choices matter more than most men want to admit. Because long after the conversation ends, long after you've walked away, your words stay behind. They live in her memory. They live in her journal. They live in her silence. And they live in the parts of her heart that still wait for healing. There's always a night that becomes more than just a date on a calendar. It becomes a turning point in someone's story. You probably didn't realize it at the time. Maybe you were tired, angry, frustrated, or emotionally distant. Maybe the words came out faster than your heart could filter them. But on that night, what you said, or how you said it, changed everything. For her, it wasn't just another conversation. It wasn't just another disagreement. It was the moment when something shifted. And the most heartbreaking part is that she didn't tell you how deep it cut. She didn't scream or fall apart in front of you. She didn't beg you to take it back. No, she absorbed it. She internalized it. She stayed quiet, and that silence became the loudest sound in her world. What you said that night didn't just echo in her ears, it echoed in her identity. She started second-guessing herself. She started wondering if she was enough. She started seeing shadows where there used to be light. The person she thought you were felt different. The connection she thought was unbreakable now felt fragile. The love she thought was safe suddenly felt like something she had to tiptoe around. That one night changed the tone of your relationship. It introduced doubt. It introduced distance. It made her start building emotional walls, not because she stopped loving you, but because she didn't feel safe in the way she once did. You see, a woman remembers how a man makes her feel during the highs, yes, but she especially remembers how he made her feel when she was vulnerable. That night, you were probably thinking about getting through the moment. You might have wanted to prove a point, win an argument, or vent your own pain. But she was listening for reassurance. She was hoping for kindness. She was looking for the man she trusted. And instead, she got the version of you that didn't seem to care. You may have even gone to sleep without another thought, thinking the moment had passed. But for her, the moment never left. That night replayed in her mind the next morning, the next week, and maybe still today. It became the reference point for all the other moments that followed. That's how powerful one night can be. And that's how easily things change when words are left unguarded. She never brought it up again, not because she forgot, but because she didn't want to seem dramatic. She didn't want to reopen the wound. But the wound never really closed. It sat there, under every smile, under every conversation, under every moment you assumed was normal. That night is not something she can erase. It became a landmark in the map of her heart, a place she visits when she wonders what went wrong, or why she doesn't feel the same sense of closeness she once did. You didn't mean to change everything, but you did. And until that moment is acknowledged, until the weight of that night is understood, it will keep standing silently between you and her, no matter how much time passes. Time has a way of making. US believe that things fade, that old words lose their edge, and that wounds heal simply because the days go by. But emotional memory doesn't operate on the same timeline as logic. It doesn't follow the calendar. It follows the heart. And the heart remembers differently, especially when something cut deep. You might think that what you said was forgotten, that the pain dulled, that the sting wore off, and that the night you spoke those words has long since been buried in the past. But emotional memory doesn't let go just because you do. What you said became more than just a sentence. It became a feeling attached to a moment. And every time a similar emotion surfaced, disappointment, rejection, abandonment, that memory came flooding back, like a wave too strong to fight. That's how emotional memory works. It's not passive. It's not silent. It speaks in the moments you least expect it. In the way she hesitates before opening up. In the way her tone changes when she feels uncertain. In the way she pulls back when she's reminded of how vulnerable she once was. She might not bring it up. She might have buried it beneath layers of daily life, of responsibilities, of trying to move forward. But buried doesn't mean healed. Emotional memory sits there, sometimes quietly, sometimes loudly, coloring the way she sees everything that comes after. And here's the part many men don't understand. While time may heal physical wounds, emotional wounds need more than just days and nights. They need validation. They need truth. They need care. You can't ignore what you've never confronted and expect it to dissolve on its own. You might say, "But I've changed." And maybe you have. Maybe you've grown, matured, reflected. But that doesn't mean she's forgotten. Because what she remembers is not just what you said, but how it made her feel. Feelings aren't erased by time. They are only softened by healing. And healing doesn't come from distance. It comes from attention. The deeper the emotion tied to the memory, the longer it lasts. Especially when love was involved. Because the closer she let you in, the more space your words occupied in her emotional world. You weren't just anyone, you were someone who mattered. That's why your words still echo. That's why your silence still hurts. That's why your presence, even after change, still walks in carrying the memory of that moment. You may have changed, but that memory hasn't. And if you're serious about reconciliation, about closure, about becoming the kind of man who brings peace instead of pain, then you must understand this. Emotional memory is stronger than time. It doesn't forget just because you've forgotten. It doesn't move on just because you have. It waits not for perfection, but for acknowledgement, for understanding, for words that carry healing to the very place where pain was born. Because the heart may forgive, but it never forgets the moments that made it bleed. There are wounds that bleed and cry out, and then there are wounds so quiet, so deep, they sit beneath the surface like hidden bruises of the soul. She never spoke about them, not because they weren't real, but because they were too personal, too painful, too connected to a love she never wanted to question. That night, when you said what you said, she didn't shout, she didn't collapse, and she didn't accuse. She stayed silent. But silence doesn't mean it didn't hurt. It means she didn't feel safe enough or strong enough to say how deeply it did. Maybe she told herself it wasn't worth the fight. Maybe she thought it would pass. Maybe she thought you didn't mean it, or that if she just stayed calm, you'd come back and make it right. But you didn't. And so she stayed quiet, swallowed her hurt, and wore her smile like a mask while her heart tried to patch itself behind closed doors. You never saw the tears she wiped away alone. You never heard the prayers she whispered late at night, trying to make sense of how someone she trusted could say something that made her feel so small, so unloved, so disposable. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was strength. It was restraint. It was dignity, but it was also a sign of damage. The kind of damage that doesn't show up in loud arguments or dramatic exits. The kind that shows up in withdrawal, in detachment, in emotional distance. You started noticing how she wasn't as open anymore, how her laughter didn't come as easily, how her eyes didn't hold the same light they once did. And maybe you thought it was stress or mood or just one of those phases. But what you missed was that she had been bleeding on the inside since that night. Because when someone you love wounds you with words, it's not just what was said, it's the realization that you let them into the deepest parts of your soul. And they still chose to strike. She didn't tell you how much it shook her. She didn't show you the way she questioned her worth afterward, or the way she began to doubt her place in your life. No, she held it all together for you, for the relationship, for the hope that it was just a mistake, just a moment, just something to forget. But forgetting is not the same as healing. And without healing, her heart carried the pain like a shadow, following her into every interaction with you from that point forward. She became careful, cautious, maybe even cold, not because she stopped loving you, but because she didn't want to be hurt that deeply again. You didn't hear about it, because she didn't scream. She protected you from the full weight of her pain. But that doesn't mean it didn't exist. In fact, the pain she never spoke of may have been the loudest part of her journey with you. The silent storm you never noticed. There's something unspoken in the way a woman who loves you holds space. For your growth, your awareness, your change. Not because she wants to be above you, but because she's hoping you'll rise to meet the man she believes is still inside you. After that night, after those words, after the shift in her heart, she was waiting. Not for an apology wrapped in grand gestures, not for flowers or promises, but for your realization, for that quiet, sincere moment when you would truly see what your words did to her. She was waiting for you to recognize the exact moment when you crossed a line, when you stopped being her safe space and started becoming the source of her confusion. She waited through your silence, through your mood swings, through your routine, hoping that one day you'd look at her not with impatience, not with indifference, but with a heart that finally understood. You didn't know it, but every time she made the effort to be near you, every time she answered kindly when you didn't deserve it, every time she gave more love than she was receiving, she was giving you a chance to notice. She was offering you a doorway back into her trust, but the days passed. You went on like things were fine. And she began to wonder, did you even remember what you said? Did you care? Were you so blind to her that you couldn't see the quiet sadness behind her eyes? Her waiting wasn't weakness. It was hope. Hope that the man she once admired, the man she opened her soul to, would come back with understanding in his eyes and truth in his voice. But hope gets heavy. And the longer she waited without a sign, the more she began to accept that maybe you would never see it. Maybe you would never know how much it cost her to stay. Maybe you would never understand that love isn't just about saying the right thing when it's easy, but realizing the wrong thing when it's already done. She didn't want to beg for your awareness. She didn't want to plead for reflection. She wanted you to look back at that night and realize, all on your own, that those words didn't just disappear into the darkness. They lodged themselves inside the heart of someone who gave you everything. What she needed wasn't perfection, it was presence. She was waiting for you to sit with your own conscience, to walk back into the moment in your mind and finally feel what she felt. The ache, the confusion, the quiet heartbreak. And most of all, she was waiting for you to love her enough to say, I see it now. I get it. I understand what I did. That kind of realization doesn't come from guilt. It comes from growth, from courage, from maturity. She never stopped wanting that from you, not because she was desperate, but because she believed there was more inside you than what you showed her that night. Healing never begins where truth is denied. It begins in the uncomfortable place where what's been buried is finally brought into the light, not with excuses, not with deflection, but with honesty. That night didn't just pass. It planted something in her, something she's carried every day since. But the healing she needed didn't come from forgetting or pretending it didn't happen. What she needed, what every heart silently waits for, is truth, not from others, but from the one who caused the hurt. You can't heal a wound while denying it exists. You can't reach her heart again by stepping over the damage like it doesn't matter. And no matter how much time has passed or how many good days followed the bad one, until that truth is acknowledged, until the weight of your words is faced with humility, nothing truly changes. You may have told yourself it wasn't that serious. Maybe you even convinced yourself she was too sensitive or misunderstood your intentions. But truth doesn't hide behind comfort. It requires courage to say, "What I said hurt you, and I accept that. I own that." You have to meet the moment. Again, not with pride, but with presence. Because until you face the full impact of what you caused, your apologies will only feel like patches on a wound that still bleeds underneath. She doesn't need a man who's always right. She needs one who's real, one who's brave enough to revisit what went wrong without turning away. Healing doesn't begin with "get over it" or "that was a long time ago." It begins with "I remember, I was wrong. You didn't deserve that." When a woman has carried hurt in silence for too long, even the smallest act of genuine accountability feels like breath to a soul that's been suffocating. You may think it's too late. You may wonder if going back to that painful night will only reopen wounds. But the truth is, the wound has never closed. It's just been wrapped in silence. And silence never brings closure, it only delays it. You can rebuild trust, you can restore connection, but not without truth. She's not asking you to relive the past just to punish you. She's asking you to meet her where she broke, so she doesn't have to carry that break alone anymore. Healing begins the moment you stop protecting your ego and start protecting her heart. It begins when you care more about how she feels than about how you appear. That kind of truth is rare. It's costly. It takes a man willing to lower his defenses, willing to feel the discomfort of knowing he hurt someone who never wanted to fight him, only love him. But once that truth is spoken, once it's met with sincerity, something shifts. The walls she built start to come down, not because you forced them, but because you finally understood why they were built in the first place. That is where healing starts, not in pretending the pain didn't happen, but in honoring it enough to face it head on and love her through it until her heart feels safe again. So now you know she never forgot what you said that night. Not because she's holding a grudge, not because she's emotionally weak, but because those words came from someone she trusted, someone she loved. And when love is involved, pain doesn't just touch the mind, it scars the heart. That one moment, that one sentence, that one careless exchange didn't just pass through the air. It rooted itself inside her. It shaped the way she looked at you and at herself. And while you may have moved on like nothing happened, she's been carrying the weight of that moment ever since, quietly, faithfully, with a strength you never acknowledged. She didn't need you to be perfect. She needed you to be present, to remember, to return to the place where her spirit broke and help her rise again. Because the measure of a man is not in how loudly he speaks, but in how deeply he listens. Bravely, he confronts what he's done and chooses to grow from it. And if you truly want to rebuild what was broken, if you still value the depth of the love you once had, then go back. Go back in humility. Go back with truth. Go back with a Heart willing to take full ownership, not just of your words, but of their impact. Because only when you face that moment can you begin to restore what was lost. And if you do it sincerely, if you do it with love, you might just find that healing was always possible, not because she forgot, but because she hoped you'd remember. Enough to make it right. This is your chance to redeem that night. This is your chance to become the man she always believed you could be. Not by rewriting the past, but by finally honoring it.